This week, I pushed my clients to the absolute limit. It involved a plane crash, freezing water, and Mother Nature trying to absolutely destroy us. And honestly, it was borderline dangerous, but god damn, did it work? Was it effective? This is one of the best weekends with my clients that I've ever had. And for them, it was transformational. We traveled for hours and hours to get there. It was in the very remote Brecon Beacons. If you don't know what the Brecon Beacons are, they're in like the far-flung reaches of Wales. It's a notoriously honking environment, like absolutely disgusting. It seems to have its own ecosystem and weather system where it kind of just does what it wants and the weather changes instantly. It's so demanding to operate in, and that's exactly why the SAS do a lot of their initial training there. But to everyone, including myself, it was new. It was completely unfamiliar, and that is essential for creating mental performance shifts. When you're in the same environment as you always are, you're going to think the same thoughts. Your brain has no reason to think, hey, I've got to change the way I operate because I know how to interact here. So you have to change your environment to change the quality of your thoughts. That's exactly what I was doing there with my clients. It was about changing the environment to put them in a place where their brain knows, let's find some novelty. When you're in familiar environments, your brain is hardwired to think familiar thoughts, not the ones that are going to grow your business, not the ones that are going to help you operate at a higher level, not the ones that are going to help you find clarity and deliberacy and intentionality. So we took advantage of that for rapid growth. Some of the guys there, they knew each other before. Others had never met. But everyone was very similar in a lot of ways. Not necessarily in the industry they're in, but they were all ambitious business owners, somewhere around their 30s, so it's like very late 20s to very early 40s. They were not just seeking profit, they were seeking excellence in all domains of life, in fitness, in relationships, in happiness, and in business too. All of them push themselves as just a way of life. They're about maximizing their experience on Earth, and all of them get that mental performance is just as important to their success as business acumen. Which brings me on to my second rule. You grow quickest You grow quickest around people like you. You're not the average person. We know that. I'm not the average person. You need people like you in order to grow. The guys had no idea where they were going, how long they'd be walking for, and what would be unfolding. But we started what I call a yomp. And you could see it spinning in their minds, and they all clarified it afterwards. The thing that stressed them out and made this most challenging is they didn't know when this was going to end. They didn't know how far they'd be going, how much vert they'd be exploring, what difficult things would be happening along the way. But we began yomping, and we began gaining some serious vert. The Brecon Beacons are notoriously hilly. They are somewhat near mountains. They're kind of like, I think they'd be described as mountains in the UK, but they're very, very big hills. And after they settled in, after the first 8K or so, in fact, I took them to the remnants of a plane crash from World War II. In front of that, I spoke for a short while, and then split them up into some pairs. So each person went off with another guy. And I gave them a question for them to discuss with each other, designed to help them find a clearer mind to operate from. And they spoke about it together as they walked through, well, it started off as pretty good conditions, but then it became honking conditions. They spoke vulnerably, they spoke openly, and then after another 4 or 5 kilometers, we stopped and we debriefed and we all learned from each other. And that process repeated for a few more questions, a few more prompts. I found that when I walk, I access clarity, and there's lots of theories as to why that would be the case, but these guys found that clarity too. The most important instruction that I gave them was to be completely open with each other. to communicate openly, to discuss openly, to hear each other, and to let the true part of them that really needed to show. I completely banned positive perspectives. I said there is no positivity going on here. Our goal is to give you permission to share what's really going on, because that is the way that you grow. Positive thinking is the most dangerous idea in psychology. It's not an attribute. It's just naivety disguised as optimism. It can flatline businesses. It can destroy relationships because it's hiding you from the truth. Only by confronting reality can you change it. As the day went on, kilometres racked up, the weather turned for the much, much, much worse. We had hail, we had sleet, we had wind of up to 85 kilometres an hour, which basically knocked you off your feet. As you were taking a step forwards, your foot would get knocked out from beneath you. My poor dog, I wasn't the greatest dog owner. I felt very guilty afterwards, but he was shivering. He should have had a coat on, a big coat. That was the only thing I didn't plan. I thought he'd be more rugged than he was, the poor little boy. But anyway, enough of my guilt. Everyone, including the dog, but myself too, began to get challenged, began to be pushed, began to get very uncomfortable and wet and cold. And we went uphill and downhill and uphill and downhill and uphill. And there seemed to be a lot more uphill considering we started at the same point as we finished. And then, just as they thought it was over, I invited them kind of firmly to get in one of the lakes and do some cold exposure with me. The air temperature was below freezing. The lake was brutally cold with some savage waves too. And I'll be honest, I didn't want to go in myself. I didn't fancy it. Everyone around me looked like they're dreading it. And I was thinking, well, I knew it wasn't going to be dangerous, but you've got that logical part of your mind going, Tom, do you really need to do this? And everyone's looking around, kind of sharing that same experience. They were hesitating as they're getting undressed, like, is this actually going to happen? They had nervous eyes, and they were doubting that I was actually mad enough to encourage them to do it. But everyone there took the steps to push themselves to find out what they're really made of, to do something difficult. And this wasn't just a blind thrashing from my military days. It was very, very different. It was an opportunity to make them tougher and stronger. And that only happens when you know your limits of what you know is possible, when you don't know if you can succeed. To do this, you have to make yourself incredibly uncomfortable. 23 kilometers, 1,500 meters of elevation after we started, we got back to the cars as the hail, it became truly unbearable. I had to walk backwards so it didn't sting my face too much. And we headed to the pub, for most of us had a steak, and then made our way to a wild camp. And the night was savage. The temperature dropped to minus 5 degrees centigrade, or Celsius, never sure whether it's Celsius or centigrade. Anyway, and the wind was just ripping through this wild campsite that I was chosen. I thought I'd actually done a very good job. I found an abandoned quarry that was really protected, but still this wind was just ripping through the campsite. But we survived, didn't sleep very much. Some of us shivered a bit more than others and headed home in the morning. And I think a lot of us stopped by to get a lot of coffee on the way back. I know I had 3 coffees in a 5-hour journey. And over the next 12, 24 hours, messages just dropped into my inbox. These guys consistently said, I found something there. They were bursting with new ideas about their business operation, how they could perform better, and proof that they were more capable, they were more tough, they were more resilient than they realized. This week, they've been absolutely kicking ass in business. They've been smashing it. They've been making high quality decisions. They've been training hard, living fully, hiring and firing, some of them performing really well, making big decisions. This is what builds a business and a life that you love. You won't build your business with the same thoughts that got you here. And if you've got to this point in this podcast, I'm going to be offering up 4 spaces on a 90-day mental performance sprint with me over the next 2 months. So 90 days, you and I, absolutely crushing it. It's demanding, it's intentional, it's highly effective, just like the weekend. This isn't a group program. This is deeply personal work. It's a mindset camp for your mental performance. And that's how we ensure it's exactly what we need, because it's deeply personal, customized to you. To apply, you have to be turning over in excess of, let's say, 300k pounds per year. So that's probably about 400k US dollars. You've got to be ambitious and driven, and you've got to be ready to commit to a higher standard of performance. If you're interested, find me on Instagram, shoot me the word interested, and I'll let you know how to apply.